Hello, I'm Oral Gibbs, and welcome to Oral Gibbs Live. Well, my guest on the program, he's not a stranger to us at all, so you'll meet my guest in a while. Let me tell you about our sponsors. Windward Islands Bank, the Windward Islands Bank in three locations, Phillipsburg, Simpson Bay, and in Cul-de-sac for all your banking needs is a Windward Islands Bank. And GEBE, a local water and electricity company. GEBE serving St. Martin for over 6 decades. That's GEBE. And I'm Oral Gibbs here with you on Oral Gibbs Live. With me is former president of St. Martin, President Daniel Gibbs. How are you doing, sir?
I'm pretty fine, thank you, Earl.
So how have things been going so far with you?
Well, a new man with a lot of stress less, we would say. But no. I'm very good and looking for the next step.
Well, I know you're right now campaigning for a whole new post, right?
Well, yes. In our system, we have every 5 years the territorial election, which elects the president, and 2 months after we have the parliamentarian election, where the parliamentarian sits in Paris, which makes it different with the Dutch side. But that election comes just after the national presidential election. Because we had the territorial election for the local president.
Right.
We had the national president 1 month after. And now we have the parliamentarian election, where we have a representative for St. Barts and St. Martin. There's one representative sitting in parliament.
And you have a running mate with you, right, in St. Bart's?
Yes, the list is composed by the candidate actually, and what we call a suppléant, which is a replacement, just in case you're called to different, I would say, functions, or if physically you can be active in Parliament, then you have the person who replaces you, and that person is from St. Bart's, Thomas Gréau, and he's president of the Chamber of Commerce in St. Bart's.
So you were president of St. Martin, and you went on, when they say, 17th of March was the election on St. Martin, and a lot of people were disappointed because a lot of people thought that you were really going to win that election. How do you feel about it now?
Well, to be honest, I thought also I was going to win. Well, I think, I'm someone who never blame a contrariety, and I think this is democracy, and we need to accept it. I believe that we had a very nice campaign in the sense that the team that I had the privilege of leading was a nice team, where we were ready to continue the action that we started it, but the reality did not permit us to do that. But on another hand, it opens also other doors to be able to function still in the arena of politics, because we sit 5 of our members. We got to have 5 members of our list elected in opposition in Island Council, and 1 in Executive Council, which
That's
is
you, right?
which is me.
So is there anything you would have done differently now, looking back?
Well, it's as you say, it's always easy afterward to say, okay, I should have done this, like that. No, really and truly, I think that those 5 years were quite difficult, with certain events that we would not expect when we came in 2017, such as the Hurricane Irma, such as the COVID situations, such as the different strikes and social disturbance. But yes, when you're managing in those circumstances, you don't really have the time to think on how you want to get things done. And I think whether it was the French side or the Dutch side, there was a lot of work to put in order to get this island back on track. And that was my motivation from the next day of Irma until the end of my mandate. So yes, there's plenty things with the experience now, with the reflection of what went through, that we would I would probably handle things differently. I've said it immediately after losing the election. Yes, I've heard the cry and the need of the population for more proximity of their elected members on the field. But again, without taking or giving justifications, at that time I had, in French we say, my head in the la tête dans le guidon, which means that I was into the functioning of the collectivité, having the need to put back things in place as quick as possible, traveling back and forth, getting budget adequate so that we can push some investment. All those things takes time, a lot of stress, and a lot of other things that came in between. But yes, it is necessary for us to do our autocritic as politicians and see the things that we thought went wrong, to say, okay, this is what I have to correct. Proximity with the population is one. More communication of what you're doing. I'm someone, I have this way of doing, is that I like to put words to action. And as long as I don't get certain things done, I don't promote it. And maybe this is a mistake of on my side, not to promote more where I'm going, what I want to do. I give the guidelines, but then after have a regular communication with the population on how things are going forward, where we are finding obstacles, why it's delayed. I think that the population at a certain time needs explanation in order to understand, and those are one of the things that definitely I will correct.
Was it possible in the runoff to have another party join you because the other guys, they all gang up on you?
Yeah. That's a good question, Aurel. Effectively, the French law permits that on the runoff that you can join with another party. But you see, the concept of Union for Democracy, which is the political party that I have the privilege to lead, has a concept that we don't change a team during the time of the election. If you have to change something, you do it before, at the beginning. The reason for that is very clear, Oral. I said it on many occasions. I think the population needs the respect that we as politicians needs to give them, which means that when you have an orientation, when you have a vision, when you have something that you want to share with your population, you believe in what you're doing. So that's what you defend during the election. And how could you define a strategy, a vision before the election, and on the next day of the first round, when you go to the second round, you gather or you mix with another team which had another vision, which had another way of functioning, which probably in the first round that you dispute or you try to prove to them that your project was better than theirs. But all of a sudden in the second round, you join with them, and what are you selling to the population? Your vision or the vision of the team that came and joined with you? So for me, it's difficult to address to the population and say, okay, this is my vision. This is what I came as a platform to suggest to you for the next 5 years that I want to put in place, and how I want to handle things, and how we want to do things. And then all of a sudden, you join with someone. So what do you present to them? So I find that the political arena needs to bring back this credibility of their candidates and be honest with the population, and not just run an election to win an election, but win an election because you want to convince your population that what you propose, what you submit, is the right direction in which you want to go. So that's the concept that we used. It didn't work on numbers, of course, because on 6 teams there was 5 running against 1. But when you see the scores, you would see that I made 3,000, Team Gibbs made 3,216 votes, which was pretty good for a team that was running on its own and did not gather or mix with another team.
Okay. So when you look back at your term, 5 years as President of St. Martin, I don't think there was other person in the history of this island that had to go through what you went through, from Hurricane Irma to a pandemic, to all kinds of social disturbances. did you say to yourself, what the hell I got myself into?
it, that is today with the reflection and the 5 years pass. Yes, it is strange to say, okay, you run an election and you never expect these things to happen, and well, that's life. And I try to take it on a positive way because you never know. Tomorrow, these things can happen again. We are in a zone where we have hurricanes on a regular basis. They are stronger and stronger each year, and you take and you gain the experience of what you went through. I paid the consequences the hard way, but nevertheless, it was a fruitful experience to know how to manage in terms of crisis. When you manage something, when everything is flat and everything is with no turbulences, it's pretty easy. But when you have those difficulties, it prepares you also. Not that I'm saying that I'm happy to have them, but I'm saying that when you go through them, it gains the experience necessary in order to be ready if anytime on another occasion you go through those same turbulences. But also, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
also, it's enriching because not only for yourself or for your territory, but also to bring and share your experience with different islands, different territory that would experience that maybe one day, which I don't hope for them. But it can be also a sharing help that you can bring to those different islands if one day one would be encountering those kinds of turbulences.
You had a vision for the waterfront in Marigot and the
Still
port.
have.
So it's still alive.
Yes. Sometimes persistence is what makes things happen. You don't do things overnight. It's a lot of, I would say, work, studies, but the vision is still there. Probably retract on another level because, of course, there was, and I always said so, there was a before Irma, now there's an after Irma. And you have to take the experience of what happened, the consequences of all these things, change the concept of the functioning of our islands. So we needed to readapt. And today, I still have the vision of the kind of the development that I would like for Saint Martin, and probably with a little bit of rearrangement as far as those development are concerned.
So you're in opposition, 5 seats in the opposition. You're a part of the executive council. But do they listen to you, or how do they treat you there? Because normally when you're the sole member in there, I can't imagine what happens.
No, yes, it's not always easy, you know, the role of opposition. But that's the name of the game, and you have to accept it. Sometimes it can be disturbing, and sometimes it can be in certain ways that it's difficult to accept. But at the end of the day, it's about the people affairs, and you have to put certain things aside and try and bring your input in order to make things better. As long as you keep that concept as a constructive opposition, as I did, because when I was parliamentarian from 2012 to 2017, I was not only in opposition in Saint Martin with Madame Henson government, but I was also in opposition in France with the government of Monsieur Hollande, because Sarkozy, which was the candidate that I was supporting, lost the election. So I was opposition in both, so I had that experience. And as I say, if we keep on a constructive opposition, it is a way for us also to make sure that the things that we try to implement, that they see the day, whether it was with us or with someone else, because that's the fact today. They voted a budget that came out straight of our administration with a vision of investment that was already engaged for 153 million, etc., etc. So all these things are things that were necessary for the development of Saint Martin, and we're going to be looking forward to see them come true, because, as I say, no matter if it's us that permit it to happen or the others, it is something that is good for the country. So that's what we were looking in.
But they adopted the budget that your party left there.
Yes, because when you present projects, is either like the mayor used to say, you present something and you blow hot wind because you don't know how you're gonna finance, how you're gonna put it in place, but you just present nice pictures, nice projects, and at the end of the day, there's a whole work on the background that people don't see to be able to give credit and credibility to the project that you presented. And that's what we've been doing for 5 years. It took some time to prepare. You have to go and seek for European funding because we're part of Europe, so we're due to that. So we went and seek some European fund, national funds also, and part of our fiscality, knowing that we had no fiscality for 2 years after Irma, but still going in areas in which we can find those financing. So we got to program 153 million of investment for the development of our territory. And when I'm saying that, I'm saying investment that are sealed financially, but also sealed by biddings to be able to engage those projects. So you couldn't do one step before the other one. So the first was preparation, and second is realization. The only frustration is that all what we prepared will be probably realized outside of our mandate.
All right. When you look back at the legal problems that you had, do you think that had any bearing on the outcome of the election?
Yes, of course, at least for part of it. And because for the understanding of the population, it depends how things were explained, and there was a lot of demagogy that was done during those 5 years. The thing is also that I waited very long before I started my campaign because there was a court case that was hanging over my head and that I find unjust. But at the end of the day, the prosecutor gave me right by freeing me on all charges. And that was a satisfaction. That was finding back my honor, and that gave me the energy to continue in that direction and saying that there is a justice. But of course, oral, that the whole period of time that you're managing with this over your head have consequences, and the understanding again of the population saying that, oh, is it true? Is it not true? Is he guilty? It takes off some of your credibility, and it's difficult to gain that when you have a process and you have a deliverance just 2 weeks before an election. So it's easy when things are said to spread that news, but then when the result is, well, at the end of the day, there was nothing. That is more complicated to distribute as news and have most of the person know exactly what went.
But these charges, were they trumped up, say, locally by the French state, or is it that you had supported you were in opposition of governments in France that you didn't support?
No, there was two things. After Hurricane Irma, we had a, I would say, a préfet, which is the equivalent of your governor, who decides for states, who's the representative of state. And after Hurricane Irma, the Minister of Overseas Department came down, and with the préfet, they told myself and Monsieur Bruno Magras that we had 6 months between 6th of September and 31st of December to act without going through bidding in order to counteract and react quick enough to put back things in place.
That was verbal or written?
It was verbal. It was verbal, but the minister came back at many occasions and confirmed what she had said, and so we started working immediately, and within for that time of that period
6
of time,
months,
we went directly to the companies and we had things done to be able to overreact quickly because you had to clean up. I took a loan immediately of 5 million so that we can have subsidies to be able to do that part of the cleaning up and all necessary to put back things. You know, there was no current, no water, no communication. That was difficult living, and I think that people who remember at the end of December. Even in 2018, we were still in a kind of chaos on this island. And 2 years after, so we done that part in Saint Martin. And 2 years after, there was a prefect of Guadeloupe who wrote us a letter and stating that, oh, by the way, the period of they call that the period of emergency. And he said the period of emergency was no longer 6 months, it was only 1 month, which means that after 1 month, after Irma, everything was okay and you were functioning normally, which is totally impossible. So all those, I would say, action that were made without going through biddings was reproached to me. So that's the prosecutor at the time who was taking care of that file was not taking in consideration that you cannot give the rules of the game at a certain time, and then 2 years after you change the rules and you say, oh, it's convenient for you, so you're going to decide now that the period of emergency is only 1 month. Well, guess what? You can't rewind. What was done was done.
But do you think that you had communicated that with the population more openly? Because listening to you now, in hindsight, probably if you had been more forthright with the population, look, these are the issues, this is what I'm being confronted with, it would have put pressure on them to probably change in a way.
Yeah, probably I should have communicated more. You know, in all this, Oriel, the most important for me is that I know what I've done and I know what I haven't done. And one thing is sure is that my mind was clear on how the process went through, and if I've done the things in the wrong way. Yeah, so of course it was stressful, and being president is stressful, and we know the rules as we get in. Now this was unfair, the way that we were treated, and you could have seen that there was I would say a kind of hunting to take down a man, and that's exactly what the new prosecutor, because in between the prosecutor changed and the new prosecutor mentioned that the allegations that were stated against me had no foundation, and he even said that when I see Mr. Gibbs in front of me, I see an honest man, and on what was said, there was not enough, I would say, information, or there was not enough proofs in these applications to prosecute Mr. Gibbs. And on 9 charges, he annulled 9 charges totally. So that is a satisfaction at the end of the day. Yeah. And just hope I don't have to go through. That was worse than a hurricane, because it's your honor. When you know that you put all your implication, when you know that you put all your dedication, when you know that you try to do your best to come and help your population, and you see that some way, somehow, a kind of wickedness of the prefect of that time to use terms and say all of a sudden you change the rules when things is done just to prosecute you.
Given all that you've gone through, people say, why is he coming back again now?
Well, you know, it's a dedication. As I said, the ending of the judgment, I would say, put me back in good mood with justice. I say to myself, there is a justice after all. And when you are dedicated to what you're doing, and when you're fully dedicated to what you're doing, you want to continue your action.
In a sense, you really want to serve your country.
Yeah, so if it's not on a local level, well, then it will be on a national level. And I've served both, so I have that experience. I have that that long-term experience, because I started politics in 2001. Okay. With Albert Fleming, and I've been deputy mayor. Then I became vice president when we got in the new setting of the collectivité. Then after I became deputy, and now president, well, past president. And I guess that I do have the experience today to be able to bring part of that experience
Yeah.
to better the functioning of this territory by protecting Saint Martin by national laws that would be affecting our island.
And you're a lawyer, notary by profession, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been a notary, still a notary, but not functioning.
Yeah. So I'd like if you can explain to my audience a little bit about your vision, plans, how important this election, June 11 is,
Mhm.
and why they should vote for you and your team.
Well, first, it's an election that there's a small turnout in terms of percentage, and it's unfortunate.
That's traditional in a way.
That's traditional, and it's not only local; it's also national. But it's unfortunate because it is an important election because actually the parliamentarian sitting in France is defending the country upon the laws which the state has competence, which is the regalian, I would say, competences of state that implement laws that can have effects on our territory. So we need to have strong representative. We need to have a clear vision of who we will be sending in parliament in order to be able to protect again and present amendments when it's necessary, or even do propositions of law to better the functioning on our island. So it's a function that is different from being president, but it's a function that is pretty much important for the consequences that it can have for us. For example, in terms of health. You have things that are voted, and we saw during the COVID time that they had direct effect on us in Saint Martin. In terms of cooperation, which is I would say the important part of the two sides of this island functioning together, which you know that most of the things that we manage with the dot side is taking through the cooperation issues. And I've been pledging for many years for the United Congress between the French and the Dutch on certain areas of cooperation, and that is important. And take the politics aside, oral, and reflect 2 seconds on a level that we put, again, politics totally aside. We, at the end of the day, will have to think about maybe having a consuming of electricity with one unit functioning, which would cost cheaper for managing and cheaper for the population by spending. The water situation, maybe one side is more profitable than the other side. Maybe we can use the same managing to serve the entire island. The road net system, we drive on the same roads to go from one side to the other one. So maybe those policies can be done together to maximize our way of doing things. Tourism is a luxury here. It's 95% of our economy. So maybe it's time, even if we do keep our originality of the vision of how we want to develop tourism, that's okay. But when we sell tourism for this island abroad, we can do it on a unique cover. And that's why I pledge on different issues of cooperation that we have a united Congress. I even say that we were, in that part, an example for France and for Holland, because they are functioning as European countries when we were doing the same since 1648 with the Concordat. We had two territories living together without a border, a closed border, but an open border, and functioning with rules, different rules, but sharing the same island and crossing border, whether it was the human, whether it was the goods. It is a functioning that we set as an example. So let us go to the next step. And let us try to envision and be that example for Europe also, because we have today the complication that the Europeans don't have, because we have one side that is totally part of Europe, which is Saint Martin French side, and we have one part that is a OCT, which is the Dutch side, which is not part of Europe but associated to Europe through Holland. So which makes it even more difficult, because our border is not closed, which it should be. In the concept of Europe, it should be closed, because you have one country that is European and another one is not. So here's an example where we show that we can function with two different systems with setting rules and regulation that accommodate our functioning. So we are leader in that concept. So by creating the United Congress, where the two executives of both sides would be sitting, can prepare all those areas of cooperation and areas of collaboration in which we, as two nations, wants to function locally. I think it's about time that we forget and we put aside our egos, we put aside the memorandums of understanding that for me serves nothing, because it's documents that can be put back on the table at any time when you have a change of government. But when you have a united Congress, when you deliberate on those issues, it is more difficult because you have to bring back the entire executive to vote on those deliberations that you've passed. So it is putting more credibility not only towards your population in terms of policies that you will be applicating, but also it will bring for the nations of France and Holland more credibility on the actions that we will be doing, where we will be more transparent and where we will be, as two local government, showing the directions in which we want to cooperate. And I think that is important for the future. When you want to manage a territory, you don't see just tomorrow. You have to see the next step. You have to take a long-term vision, and I'm sure that one day we have to get to that. So the more we're going to wait, well, the longest we're going to be losing time. So those are one of the subjects that I would continue tackling and trying to suggest to both sides. After is a choice. We are in democracy. So, of course, it needs more discussion between both sides.
You know, I've had you on the program many times, and I've listened to you talk about that. You're very passionate about it. And I think it's a very good idea. I have my own personal opinions as to why it's been this difficult for Dutch St. Martin to work along with you in this very important idea that you have. But I don't want to say too much, so I'm not going to say.
And I'm coming back on what you asked me. So those issues are important. And I was saying concerning the election that's why this election is important, because you have issues that you have to discuss for the future of the territory. So whether you are president or you're not president, those figures you will have to face also. So I don't think that we can be thinking on a different level when we talk about national laws applying on our territory. So that's one point. I was saying also that 30% only of the population comes out. That's a rate that we have on a regular basis. But it is, and I pledge to the people to come out and vote, because it is important to share your point of views of who's going to be representing you in Parliament.
That's June 11th, right?
June 11, yeah. The round 1 is June 11, and if there's a round 2, is June the 18th, the week after.
So in order for it not to go to runoff, you have to get 52% of the vote?
51%.
51? Okay.
Well, 50% plus one vote.
All right. I'll tell you what, in case you just joined us, you're watching Oral Gibbs Live. My guest is former President Daniel Gibbs. When we come back, we'll continue speaking with him right here on Oral Gibbs Live.
In order to know what you want out of life, you need to observe, listen, and try it yourself.
Promises, we can make it if we work together. That's just how it is. Let's stand strong, and serve the land. Working hard as one nation. Yes, we can.
The more difficult it is to achieve, the more satisfying it is to make it.
Just believe in us, we'll see you through it all. Oh, never give up. Oh, never give up. We can make it.
Never forget those who were there for you, And if you dream big, you might just achieve it.
The power to serve, standing for community. OGB got the power to serve, the power to serve. We got the energy. OGB.
Make use of WIB mobile banking with easy access and direct usage of face recognition, PIN code, or fingerprint. Download WIB mobile banking app and make your transaction from anywhere at any time. For more information, visit WIB.
My guest is former President Daniel Gibbs, and he's here with me on the program, and we're speaking with him about the election of June 11, 2022, and they're running for the only seat that's deputy, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're elected, are you going to be living in France most of the time, or how is it there?
No. I'll be still living in Saint Martin, but I will be going back and forth to Paris if elected. And that is something, as I said, that I was already doing from 2012 to 2017, so it's not an issue. For me, I've been doing trips for 48 hours just to go through a vote or a meeting. Okay. But as deputy, you act in Parliament, which is in France, but you also on the field in Saint Martin and also in Saint Barth. So you need to be in your area of functioning, as well as you have to be sitting in Parliament. There's certain specific days that you sit in Parliament.
Now, the Parliament is for the whole French Republic.
The whole French Republic, because as parliamentarian, as deputy, you are the deputy of France, so you also act and decide on laws that apply for France. Now the particularity is that each region have their own deputy, and on top of that, you protect your territory on the laws that are voted concerning the effects and the consequences that it would have on your territory. So you present amendments according to the law that are coming out.
Yeah.
You present amendments that will, I would say, avoid having negative consequences on your territory.
Let me ask you, because in the last few years, we've seen a lot of problems on French Saint Martin with property. And some of the problems are in sandy ground area. I think some are also in French Quarter and in Grand Cause, French Cul-de-sac. What's the problem there? Because we don't understand sometimes.
That is, if you're doing reference on the Webster problematic that you had with the land. As president, there are certain things on which you're not competent, which is justice decision. But nevertheless, when you see that certain things are not fair, the way it's presented, well, you try and take action. That's why I decided with the Webster family as well, and with the prefect at the time, to go to Paris and meet with the Minister of Justice or his staff, to be able to apply a mission to come and deal with those issues and land issues here as far as justice is concerned. And we fought that way, and we did a presentation, and as I said, I took the liberty to go and ask for that meeting when it was also the role of the parliamentarians. But as president, I still wanted to put in my input and try and help to the situation. So we went, the Webster family gave their side of their explanation. Sorry, the prefect also did abide in the same direction, and of course myself. And at the end of the day, I'm happy to see that after the election, the Minister of Justice just sent a mission, give his authorization, what I asked for, a ministerial mission to be able to overlook all those problematics concerning land. And that's a good start, because that's a work as a parliamentarian that I will need to emphasize on and keep the pressure on, because we, as you said, there's many problems. The Pepperren also was a problem, remember, after Hurricane Irma.
Right.
And that is in the competence of state, because it's part of environmental, I would say, competencies, and the environmental competencies is the state. So as parliamentarian, those are the issues that we will have to submit to the state on the problematics that it can have on our areas.
So some of the problems are with domain land, and some are non-domain, right?
Some are domain and some are non-domain. But what we had most is what was not domain. Domain is something, again, that is the competence of the collectivity, and that's what I was trying to finalize, because it was mixed with the Pepperren. The complication was that it was mixed with the Pepperren issues, so that made it more complicated. But we had a good advance as far as that's concerned, and I had some good suggestions to do, and if I was elected, I was going to propose immediately a deliberation in order to rule out certain situations, especially concerning the price. It's not over. As I said, whatever was good before is still good today. So I will emphasize on that part and suggest the work that was done as far as that's concerned, so that the people can have their title. The problem was that the buying back the property on which they were living was sometimes costly. So I got to finalize at the end a discussion with the state in order to review certain situation, and we got to reduce the price of at least 50% to bring it down to 15 euros the meter square.
Wow.
On certain areas, and sometimes even for the symbolic euro, when the social situation proves that the person really cannot afford that property on which they have built, according to their revenue, according to certain criteria that the state would impose. So that was a work, that was a discussion, that was, I would say, a long-term study that couldn't happen in overnight, but we had a very good advance, and I don't want us to lose the advantage of that.
So you're traveling between St. Martin and St. Bart's campaigning now?
Yeah, because you need to be on both islands in order to be able to submit your candidacy and make it your duty that you convince the populations of both sides to vote for you. So I just came out of an election in St. Martin, so it's a little bit easier to continue in the battle. But in St. Bart's, even though I'm familiar to St. Bart's and their politicians and the population, but you still have to be present in order to be able to deliver the good work, the good word, as we say.
You know, I look at St. Martin and I see so many good things, both French and Dutch side. And if you're outside of this island and you listen to television, it seems like we have all of the biggest problems in the world, and we're not an island that I think is doing a lot better than many of our neighboring islands. It seems like we really complain a lot about a lot of things.
Well, this is the problematic of being so far of the two large continents, but and the same way it preserves us from certain things. So there's a good part, and there's also a negative part. The ideal is to take what's the best out of it, and overall, I think that for me, I believe we are blessed to be in this part of the world. It's just that if we do things more in terms of cooperation, we can get further. That's for sure.
It's not our nature anymore. It used to be.
Well, we need to come back to that, because tomorrow it will be battles that we need to have the strong support of not only one side, both sides, and I would say not only St. Martin, but including Anguilla, St. Barth, Sabre, St. Kitts. I mean, this neighborhood area, if we do things together, that's why the United Congress, I do not limit the United Congress to French St. Martin and Dutch St. Martin. That's a start. I say the reason we start with that is that we have to clean up in front of our house before we enlarging to others. But it is a fact that on a longer term vision, it's a United Congress, as it's called, United Congress of French and Dutch St. Martin, but also Anguilla, St. Barth, because we all need each other to be able to function. We see it when we have crisis, whether it was hurricane, whether it was COVID, whether it was whatever crisis that we can have. If we are in a collaboration functioning, we can only be stronger, because we each have different, I would say, vision of development. St. Barth is not St. Martin, Anguilla is not St. Bart's, vice versa, but we all have a little of something that the other one do not. So it's this combination that makes the luxury of the product. You know, a lot of territories, Oral, when you get to that island or that country, that you have so much flavor in the same pocket, that small pocket of islands, with all those different flavors. I mean, this is for me the golden triangle. I call it the golden triangle. And I think that we have to expand our policies among that cooperation that would make us even stronger towards the rest of the world. Because when you come here, you do feel at ease. I mean, we have our struggles, we have our problems, we have things that we would like to see different, but things don't happen on overnight. So we have to concentrate on this privilege that we have to be here, unite our forces to stay a strong region among the rest of the world.
I think that the reason why I said what I said too is that when I look at both sides of the island, I can understand too sometimes why there's this terrible feeling among a section of the population. And that section is mainly St. Martiners, both French and Dutch side. They really feel, in many cases, left out. They really feel overwhelmed by outside forces. And in some ways, they, in a way, almost given up, because they see everyone come to this island and succeed and do business and do well. What they've been seeing in the past 20 years, just the opposite happening with their own people. I wonder what they say to you on the campaign trail, because sometimes they're not honest with the politicians as they will be honest with me and say what they have to say. But what are they saying to you?
Well, no, you have some comments that goes in that direction, which I can understand. But as I say, it's an island where we were born. It's an island where we decide to live, and we each have our place on this territory as much as anyone else, and more than anyone else, because this is where we decide to live, and this is where we were born. But if you know, sometime, Oral, if we don't do the things on our own, it's not someone else who's going to do it for you. And this is a mentality that we need also to bring back, because St. Martin was also part of that. When we talk about a friendly island, yes, of course, because we were always open to the rest of the world. But we have to be consistent in what we're doing. It's not always easy, I admit. Competition is strong, for sure, but we should not give up. We have a vision of things, and we have to keep in mind that vision, and we have to keep fighting. Now, it is to us also, as we say, the politicians, to apply in the sense of having things easier for that part of the population. and sometimes the balance is very difficult to put in place because you cannot always interact as far as in French we say la concurrence, competition is concerned. But yes, those are the areas, especially in social, I would say, field, that we need to rebalance our policies and our way of doing things. But again, it's also a pride of what you are willing to do and willing to reach, that you have to push forward and you don't have to abandon.
What you see are the similarities between Saint Martin and Saint Bart's, and what's not so similar?
Well, we share the same economical vision in terms of tourism, because we both live of tourism, whether we like it or not. After we have a selective tourism in Saint Bart's that we don't have here, or partly. Here we're more on mass tourism. And we are getting, I would say, closer to a more selective clientele. But basically, for example, on the cruise, I would say, it's mostly a mass tourism. On the other hand, I tried on the French side to impulse a strategy. And I think these are the things that we're missing. When we do things, we always do them on a one shot and say, oh, this would be good to do. Okay, let's do it. I immediately, when I was vice president at the time, had a strategic tourism plan voted to be able to have a strategy and a guideline to where we want to go and where we want to lead this country. And this is what I would say, this is where we will have similarities with Saint Bart's and French Saint Martin, and there will be differences in another area of, I would say, another direction that they will be taking and the method that they will be using. And we have to join those forces to limit our competences of functioning so that each one can have their share in it. Whatever we have that would be common, well, okay, we put all our forces. That's why I said that when we look at Saint Martin, we cannot just look at one side. We need to look at both sides. We have similitudes also, but we have also differences. We have way of promoting our tourism on one side and a different way on the other side, and such as Saint Barth and such as Anguilla. But we all need each and other for the I would say the transportation of that clientele, which is the airlines. I see Anguilla is progressing on the airport, so they're getting more and more autonomous as far as that's concerned. But French Saint Martin does not have an international airport like Juliana, and Saint Barth does not have. So, and those tools are necessary in terms of development of our tourism. So here's a common goal that we need to fight on in terms of having rules and regulation put in place so that we have a better functioning. After differences, I mean, you can see it on the strategy of development that those two territories could have economically wise. You have a territory that is much smaller, that is not sharing the other half with another nation. We do have that. So it's a plus, but it also can be sometimes a burden for our functioning. So all these things can be regulated as far as you have discussion and negotiation upon a common, I would say, a common vision of how to function in those different areas, those different islands with similitudes and differences.
So you're ready for June 11th?
I'm always ready. In French, I say je ne lâche rien. I never let go on anything. I think that we have decisions in our lives at a given time that we need to take, and I took that decision to know whereas I would stop politics or I would continue politics. You always have that time when you say, is it the time to stop and take care of yourself now after taking care of a lot of things except yourself? But, when you have the passion on things that you're doing, I did that work on myself, and I think that I can give a lot more to my community, and that's why I'm presenting myself as deputy for the coming election on the 11th of June.
Well, maybe this time more people turn out than they ever did.
I do hope so. I do hope so, and I encourage them to do so because, as I say, a lot of people fought to give us the right to be able to vote and decide for our future, and it would be a pity not using that right.
Yeah. So, after June 11, and you win, and what do you call it? Senator, deputy? What is the correct name?
Deputy
Deputy?
or
Yeah.
congressman?
Congress. Okay. Because it's so confusing to us.
I know.
Although we're neighbors, it's like you guys have so many different elections.
Well, it's different election in one term because when you
Just
vote,
months apart.
yeah, because you see you don't sit in parliament like you sit in parliament in St. Martin. When you win an election, it's one election. And you have everything. You have the parliamentarian. I don't know for the senator. I think you have another election for senator.
No, you have just parliament. That's it.
Okay, and then after senator is appointed. Okay, but we separate things. That's separation. In French, you say séparation des pouvoirs.
So it's three different
Separation of
elections.
power. You have the presidential election with island councillors and executive council at the same time. That's one. Then after you have the parliamentarian election, the deputy election, which is because we are not sitting in St. Martin.
Right.
We are sitting in Paris to function.
Right.
That's why it makes it two different elections.
Right. And so that's why. And June 11
June 11
is the election for deputy.
is the first round now.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
And then, if you don't get 51%, then it goes over to
On the second round.
All right.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add in closing?
Well, I just invite those that can vote to come and give me that support because I have a lot to give again to our community, and I think that we are living on an island with a lot of privilege, and we need to emphasize and protect those privilege through different laws that can be affecting the functioning of our island. So I am there to give my services again to our community, and I invite this population that can vote for this election to come out massively and vote for Daniel Gibbs. And my replacement in case is Monsieur Gréau, because that's how the law is done. And I will thank in advance.
All right. So again, well, thank
the
you for
entire
coming.
population. Yeah.
Thank you, and wish you much success. All right.
Thank you.
All right, and that's it for now. See you next time right here on Oral Gibbs Live. Until then, good night. Goodbye.